Hello, you are in the right place if you are here to learn how crisis communications can diffuse tense interactions. Welcome to this ARWO Liquid Knowledge webinar. My name is Gina Veazey and I'll be running the show today. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to share with you. First, our session is being recorded. And I guess I'm not sharing my screen here. There we go. Sorry about that. First, our session is being recorded and all attendee mics are in mute. Second, we'll have time at the end of our session for Q&A. Please log your questions as you have them by clicking on the Q&A icon on your screen. And finally, you'll get a link to the replay of our session by email. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, CoBank, for making these webinars possible. CoBank has sponsored ARWO webinars since the very beginning, and they've been a very loyal partner to ARWO, just as I know they are to many of your organizations. So, what is ARWO? It's a fair question. And to answer it, it's my pleasure to welcome ARWO Board President Tad Bohannon, CEO of Central Arkansas Water, to explain. Tad?
Hello, everybody. My camera should be on. I hope it is.
Yes.
I'm excited to be here today and talk to you just real quick about what RO is and then introduce our guest speaker today. RO is an association of similarly minded regional water and wastewater organizations focused on finding solutions for the problems faced by regional organizations. We share knowledge among each other, and we serve as a collective voice for regional water and wastewater organizations in Washington, D.C. It is the only organization that is focused just on regional entities. And with it, it gives it a unique opportunity to talk to legislators and congressmen about what the challenges are of regional water organizations and how they can meet many of the problems faced by communities and cities all over the country right now with the increasing cost of providing safe drinking water to everybody. Now, when you talk regionalization, many times that is a challenging conversation. The rooms become heated, passions grow. Getting the message through about that this is for the benefit of ratepayers and communities is sometimes difficult. So we're fortunate today to have with us Chelsea Boozer, who is the executive director of Rogue Water. Now, I've known Chelsea for over 10 years, and she has always been a water advocate and she has always been focused on communication, effective communication. From the time she was a journalist covering the municipal entities in the area for Arkansas's largest newspaper, to when I stole her out of the newspaper journalism career and turned her into a water nerd at Central Arkansas Water, where she grew in her position and became a regional voice for CAW, to when she is now fundamentally changing Rogue Water and how it presents and how it helps utilities be better in the public voice in today's market. So, I'm honored to call her a friend, and she has the best mother-son speaking team in the business. So give her your attention today. I'm sure you will learn something. I know I will. So everybody, Chelsea.
Thank you, Tad. I appreciate that. And Tad is referring to sometimes I bring my soon-to-be 9-year-old son, he'll turn 9 on Saturday. And when we present about public speaking, he's actually a really great public speaker. And I bring him out, and Tad participated in a workshop we did recently on that. But I'm so excited to be here today and really to give you some bad news. And that bad news is that clear messaging really isn't enough. So a lot of times, if you're going through communications training and sessions in the water space, you're really getting preached with, hey, like you're not messaging correctly, you're not wording it correctly, and unfortunately, that's probably true. But I'm here to tell you that even if you do that, that it's not even enough. But the silver lining is that there are ways to get better. So I learned a ton of this and actually got really interested into the background of a ton of this when I was at Central Arkansas Water, starting out in media relations and social media and going on to government affairs and regionalism, as Tad mentioned. We are communicating with a lot of people who are in a lot of different states. So really excited today to talk to you about maybe how we can do that better and also the impact that it has at city council meetings, at your board decision making meetings, at your town halls. So I was giving this a similar talk once for some. Okay, there we go. Um, and I was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, their water council meeting, and I kind of came up. I had a glass similar to the one on the left. It was kind of discolored. And I gave it to the chairperson who was talking before me. And I said, you've been running a great meeting today. I know you're parched. Here's a, glass of tap water to help you out. And she looked at me like I was crazy, probably like you would look at me if I handed you that glass of water. And so I said, well, don't worry, it's just manganese. Really, that's a naturally occurring mineral. This is a completely safe glass of water to drink. You can drink this. I mean, watch out, don't spill it on your clothes. It probably will stain your clothes, but it's completely safe. And everyone kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And I told them, at Utilities, we message with that every single day. We give the straight facts. Everything I said was true. Those are naturally occurring minerals. Many of people take them in supplements. That water is safe to drink. I myself have made these mistakes. Unfortunately, when I was at Central Arkansas Water, I gave out messaging like this because, it's kind of what I was told about when we have a lake turnover event. But when I demonstrated there live in person, normally I was behind a computer desk and like typing away and talking on social media and doing press releases. And it made sense to me that I would just give them the facts and let them know, by the way, that's totally safe. But face to face, I would have never talked to anyone like that because that is crazy and that is insulting to someone. And so, by the way, if they Googled everything I said, this is what would come up. Tap water's toxic secret, and it would just confirm everything they already think about how we're untrustworthy. So today I want to talk to you more about that, more about common sense messaging and messaging about how our brains actually listen. And that part is really important. So we've all been there, whether it's a city council meeting, whether it's a town hall, whether it's a customer on the phone. We're talking logic, we're talking our facts, we're delivering it, and still nothing is landing. And we think it's a communications problem because we've been told, forever we have a communications problem. I'm not untelling you that. We probably do. You probably do. And you might think it's your unclear message or your bad delivery or honestly what we tend to think it's the other person. They're totally unreasonable, right? What it actually is a brain problem. The human nervous system under pressure physically cannot process information the way that you're intending it to. I want to say that again. Physically, it cannot. So it's nothing about the other person being a difficult person. That's a situation in other situations. It is that I literally, when I'm upset, when I'm not calm, I cannot hear clear logical messaging. What I loved about learning this and where it kind of went off in my head is that it's not just our customers. Like my brain works this way too. Your brain works this way too. And so that really let me have empathy for people and stop thinking it was the other person's problem, which was probably a good start. And so, the brain science around this is that when emotion is up, logic goes down. And really what's happening is it's triggering this primitive part of your brain, a small part of your brain called the amygdala. Your amygdala can only operate in fight, flight, or freeze. Very limited, not logic, not, oh, that was a really rational argument you gave me about my water being safe. I didn't hear any of your rational argument. I'm still caught up in emotion, right? And so we think when we're talking logical that we are responding properly, but really we're talking to the wrong part of the brain. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about the risk and crisis communications behind that. This is a whole body of research based on neurological and psychological science. Lots of it to do with the amygdala. But then later, I'm also going to talk about behavioral science, which I find really interesting and really gets into um, why our customers act the way they do and why we should probably be messaging differently if we want different actions. Sounds super common sense, but a lot of us aren't trained on this. The biggest mistake that happens is that we think um, more facts equals more understanding. So, hey, you're not understanding why a data center is not a problem in this community and we've got all this water. Let me just keep giving you this report and send you this study and let me send you this link. And by the way, we're good on water, we're good on this. You are just overloading them at that point and increasing the emotional load. And if you remember, let me see how many slides back. When emotion goes up, logic goes down. So increasing the emotional load really shuts down the rational brain. And you're probably thinking, Chelsea, well, what am I supposed to do? I've got to give them the information. We're going to talk about that. But before we do, we need to talk about how your customers do not care how much you know, do not care about any of the data that you're throwing at them until that they know you care. A lot of this, and this is what Rogue Water is all about, and what we teach a lot on is about public trust. And I know some of you think that's like a soft skill and a soft word, but it really is at a core of a lot of things. And until they trust us, until they know how much we care, it does not matter what's coming out of your mouth or on your social media or on your press releases. So the shift that changes everything is that you've got to regulate them first with the way you message. And I'm going to give you a really quick and easy tip on how to do that. Because in order to have a logical conversation, calm is a prerequisite. It's not a luxury. It's not nice to be talking to someone who's a little calm. If their emotions are high at city council, on the phone with the customer, at your board meeting, you've got to bring that down if you're gonna have a reasonable conversation and anything is going to be received on the other end that's coming out of your mouth. So the easiest way to do that, well, I say easy, it's not easy. None of this is easy. All this takes practice, but a really simple way is the CAP method. I talk about this a lot, so if you've seen one of my talks before, don't worry, we're not spending a ton of time here. We're going to move on to behavioral science today, but I really like to share this. Now, if you are a skilled communicator that's been doing this years and years, you probably know the CAP method. But again, I still find that this has to be practiced. I'm still practicing it all the time, and it's hard to do naturally if you kind of don't study it and do it in practice. And so the CAP method is care, action, perspective. For example, someone is worried about lead in drinking water and they have a baby and they're asking you a question about that. A lot of the times we just jump to the perspective when we say, hey, like we meet all the regulations, you don't have anything to worry about. That's quite an insulting message. Like, you don't have anything to worry about makes me think that I was dumb for ever worrying. Instead, we really need to validate the fears and validate the concerns because absolutely it makes total sense that you're concerned about your baby's health. And I am too, by the way. I care about your baby. So, the caring message, what that is supposed to do is kind of calm down the emotions and switch away from the amygdala. If we can get them to calm down a little bit and say, I hear you, I'm listening to you, I care about what you have to say, I want to listen, I want to have this conversation, then maybe they hear the action message that we have and the perspective message we have. I said earlier, one of our biggest mistakes is giving too much info, but it's also just starting with the straight facts and the info. So what care, action, perspective would look like in the situation is something like, hi, I totally understand your concern. I would be scared too. We also care about your child's health. In fact, and then this is where you give the action. Your water goes through more than 100 tests per day. And did you know that the concerns over lead in water are actually from lead in pipes? And here's what we're doing about that. Or, whatever the case is for your utility, we've got out X many lead pipes, or there are no known lead pipes, or whatever the case is. And then perspective, by the way, the federal government highly regulates this industry, and we meet all federal regulations. You can see how if I start out just validating that that's a totally reasonable question versus coming into with the facts, and I don't sound as defensive. I sound like a human, and maybe they listen to some of the actions that we were taking. This is a tool to use really just all the time. Care action perspective, that is something kind of in any situation to use. This next quick tip I'm going to give you also comes from the Center for Risk Communication. This actual graphic comes out of American Water Works Association's trending in an instance guide. It's a really good guide that covers a lot more than these two things, but both of these come out of it as well. This 2793 rule is obviously not something you can practice in all situations. It says that the human brain can effectively process no more than 27 words that can be spoken in 9 seconds, and that has three or fewer pieces of information, three or fewer takeaways. I'm giving you a whole webinar today that's doing a lot more than that. Someone earlier said they were at a 4-hour city council meeting, right? We are in many situations where this is not how we're going to communicate. And so this is not an end all be all that you need to communicate in this way all the time. But to know how the brain can effectively receive something is important in situations when you're giving talking points, when you're before the media and kind of doing a meeting interview. What's a quick takeaway? When you're messaging on social media and you're doing a post and a blurb or any kind of graphics, brochures. So usually I practice this. We're not going to practice it with you guys today. But the example I want to give actually comes from a utility in Pennsylvania. And I really love this example from them. So this was a brochure that I think it was ended up being a door hanger. And to the right, that was what's on the back. To the left, this is what's on the front. And very quickly, I mean, they have some other communication styles that they're practicing here, like how the images looks and sizing and stuff. But very quickly it says, hey, your regulations are changing, but your water quality is not. We've got all homes built prior to 1991 must have their service verified. So quickly, like this disarms me versus if this just came out and said, hey, we're checking your house for lead. What? Like there's lead in my house, there's lead in my water. I already don't trust you. This disarms me really quickly of like, oh, they just have to do this, but my water's still good. And then obviously it has more information back. So I think that's a good example. Really, what I want to spend the time with you today is talking more about behavioral science. And again, I know what you're thinking, probably looking at me like this on the other side of the screen. Science, like I don't believe there's any science behind communication, Chelsea. But actually there is. There's a whole field of science behind strategic communication. And one of Rogue's biggest mission is to really tell the water sector that and show the water sector that we need strategic communicators in the sector who are using the best practices, using the research, and using the science to communicate to our customers. And that's how we're going to build public trust. So then why am I talking to you about dog poop? I actually just added this recently because there's another firm. It's a firm actually called Action Research out of California. And this was a study that they did. And I guess they had a client and this was getting really bad. Like no one was picking up after their dogs in this park in Oceanside, California. And here's what the sign looked like. In fact, you can see these signs all over the nation, so you probably recognize it. You've probably seen a similar sign. And she really went through like one, how weird the images on this sign even are. Like no human actually stands that way, so it's not even relatable. But really what this sign is messaging is, hey, it's the law to clean up after your dog. You could be fined, and this is a public health law. Some of the other examples kind of say something about water quality and things like that. And obviously, when they were putting together the sign, that's what they wanted to message that, like, hey, this is to protect public health. We're going to fine you if you don't. They did some focus groups, they did some research, and really found out people wanted to clean up their dog poop. And the biggest motivating factor was what people might think about them if they didn't. That's actually what spoke to them. They wanted to be good citizens because they would be judged if they weren't. And one of the reasons that they weren't doing this is because they just like forgot the bag in their car and they like didn't have access to the bag. So her firm designed the graphic on the right, redid the signs, put this out, really appealed to, hey, this is your duty. Had some fun humor with it. Better images that, you know, actually look like a dog versus like a triangle figure over there. And I think they also kind of put the bags on the sign. Um, there was a 33% increase at that point in them picking up after their dogs. And so this is just a great example to show how we message, and messaging based off what they care about is really important. So one thing to ask when you're coming up with your own messaging, and you know, maybe it's not about picking up dog poop, but is it the best message or is it just your favorite? Something else she talked about, I don't have a slide for, is they were helping another client do something along the lines of like saving the habitat of some sea animal. I forget what the animal was. And so they were doing focus groups of how could they message to get people to stop littering like around the beach or stop doing whatever around the beach. And they found out nobody cared about that sea animal, but what they did care about was turtles. Now, the client did not have a project about saving the habitat of turtles, but that is what people cared about. And so instead, on their sign, they messaged about, hey, if you do this, it saves the habitat of turtles, which is true. Now, that like took letting go of the message they cared about, but it got them the action they wanted. So if you think about the water sector and messaging what our audience cares about, a lot of us are trying to update, you know, our customer information with phone numbers. And we might put out something like, hey, please update your cell phone number on your account so we can send you updates during service outages and for bill payments. That's technically true. That is what we need from them, and that's what we want to use it for. But as a customer, I've got a lot going on, and I don't really care about making your job easier or helping you because, like, I'm trying to get to my next appointment and do whatever my boss just called me about, right? Instead, if we message, hey, real-time outage updates keep you in the know, no more delayed information, sign up today. Well, I want to be in the know. I don't want to be left on the outside. And maybe I'm upset of like last time I came home and the water was out. Man, I got to get back in the car and go out to the store. I want real-time information. I don't want to be delayed. Maybe I'll take the time to put my number in there. Very simple example. It doesn't have to be that messaging on the right. I'm going to talk about that a lot today. The examples I give you do not mean go and copy these. You've got to find out yourself, what do your customers care about? Oh yeah, the story I wanted to tell here. So when I was at Central Arkansas Water during COVID, a lot of utilities across the nation talked about closing down their call center. And we talked about that, and a lot of the meetings, people were our staffers were saying, no, we can't do that because of the elderly and because of the poor and the people who don't have bank accounts and they can only pay with cash. And I said, well, let's go and ask them then. And so we did some polling in the drive-through, and I came up with a survey, and we were out there for so many days. And what we found out is that it wasn't true that these people didn't have bank accounts. And when we asked them about why you're choosing to pay in the drive-through, and by the way, our line would be wrapped around the building. We weren't really set up super well for this. Um, they said, oh, because I've always done it this way. Some of them, a lot of them said, well, it's just more convenient. I can just get in the car, come on down here on my way to work. It was routine. And so we figured out we needed a message about convenience, and routine. And one of the messages you see Manessa here holding is something our comms department put out in bill inserts about an easier way to pay, right? About that convenience. And then when I was running social media, I was like, well, people connect to people. So I put Manessa's face here showing people, hey, there's an easy way to pay, with the background kind of sub hinting at, or you could sit in that really long line, right? So really thinking about how people want to be communicated to, what they care about. To do that, we have to ask them. This slide just kind of shows you that there's strategy behind this work. You can hire consultants for this, or you can resource your team. One thing for all the decision makers out there who hold budgets, having a comms team and having them resource where they can do social listening, they can do focus groups, they can do customer surveys. People think because you can talk, you can communicate, and that's not true. Your team needs support, your team needs resources. I want to spend some time talking today about five different behavioral science, I don't know what you call them, but we'll talk about five different ones. And we're going to sit with an example on data centers here in a minute. It starts with these two men, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. They're two Israelites who were doing social scientists who were really testing the theory of, for decades, for years, economists thought that humans are rational. And these two guys were like, are humans really rational? Let me test that. And so they got together and they asked a bunch of simple questions to people like, hey, a bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? And a lot of you guys are like 10 cents, right? That's our brain gives us a simple answer. And it's not that we're dumb. It's really 5 cents. And it's not that we're stupid. It's because our brain takes shortcuts. And so they really figured out, well, then there's two parts of the brain. So they are the ones that came up with this research behind the amygdala that I talked about before. And when the amygdala is kicked in, our reason, is a little bit down and we're not thinking logical. So a lot of the questions I get to around this stuff from utility managers is, what's the ROI in investing in this and taking all the time to redo our messaging and redo it this way? One thing I want to note that is that they didn't win the Nobel Prize in psychology, even though this is like the research that they were doing. They won it in economics. And so how we message is really important. And we found out that as economists, they were not messaging to how humans act and that it does affect the bottom line. And I think for utilities, this affects whether you're trusted or not. So it is really important. So, number one, loss aversion. People are twice as motivated to avoid losses than they are to achieve gains. You can probably think about a lot of different ways about messaging on this. A lot of times, for example, we are messaging, hey, save water to protect our future. That's not following the loss aversion rule when we actually care more about losing than we do winning. So something you could change about that is without conservation today, our community, this is how you know it's not AI when you find my mistakes like this. Our community could face water shortages and higher costs tomorrow. So actually messaging about what it could cost them if they don't change this behavior versus, hey, you could gain this. Same thing on rates. This is a good one to use there. Number two, I told you to, we're going to kind of go fast through these. Number five is the one we're going to sit with for a little bit. Social norms. So people often look to others to determine what behavior is appropriate. And the big research behind this were towels in hotel rooms. And they found, I honestly forgot the percentage, but something like a 70 something percent increase in if we just message that, hey, most people actually do this. Most people reuse these towels. Then it was more common for others to adopt that same behavior versus, hey, help save the environment. There's a lot out there, a lot of polling about how more and more with each generation we care more about the environment. That is true. It doesn't mean that we respond to messaging that way. So I really like that one. Old messaging, something you might do is, hey, please reduce outdoor watering. But if you tell them, hey, most households in your neighborhood are already doing this, they're more likely to do this. This thing's funny, but I love that there's research behind this and that us humans are funny in this way. And we really do just want to fit in. So number three, number four go together a little bit. Availability bias is how people judge risk based on what comes easily to mind and not what is statistically likely. So I can think about a shark attack. Like I think a lot of shark attacks happen, and it's really probable that I'm going to get bit by a shark when I go to the beach. When statistically, it's like 34 to 40 people in the U.S. have or experience a shark attack. Water main break. We're actually really good service providers, and a lot of people don't experience this, and it's not top of mind, even though about 250,000 of those occur in the U.S. every year. How does this come up for us? People think that because they heard something. I'm going to go to another one real quick before I come to this example. I think that pairs really well with the recency bias. So people disproportionately trust and remember the information that they receive most recently or repeatedly. If you guys know Mike McGill from Water PIO, he famously says, if they hear from you first, they trust you first. If they hear from you last, they trust you last. So when PFAS is on the news, then I suddenly think that, oh crap, I have PFAS in my water, and this is a big issue, right? Because of the recency and because that's available in my mind. So, an old way, we tell people, PFAS is detected at 7 parts per trillion, PPT, which is below regulatory standards. There's no immediate health concern. Some of that is using the care action perspective. It's forgetting the care piece. It's not a bad message, but it's responding to the wrong things, right? Because this is not a technical question actually that they have. It's that it's immediately in their mind. It's available in their mind. It's recent in their mind. So a better way to talk about this, if you know it's been on the news, is that, hey, you might have heard recently on the news, there have been stories about PFAS around the country. That's understandable. It's received a lot of attention recently. That's why we test for it regularly and publish those results. And then you get into the results, right? You acknowledge the thing that's in their mind before you present the data. That also is a really good example of the CAP method. For the recency bias, um, old, we might say PFAS has been present in the environment for decades. Basically, we want to jump to the conclusion of like, guys, why do y'all care about this right now? But a better way is to say, hey, many people are hearing about it for the first time because of recent news coverage and new federal regulations. But this attention isn't new and neither is our monitoring. We've been testing for this since whatever the year is. On the left, technically that's true. And I know a lot of us are very technical. Technically, it has been around for decades, but it's not psychologically effective. And so we need to think about changing our messaging for that way. Confirmation bias. So people seek evidence that confirms what they already believe. This one is so frustrating. I think this one a lot of us are familiar with, and a lot of us just feel very hopeless. Like, what can I do about that, Chelsea? This is just going to be true. Well, I'll tell you what not to do about it. One, it is true. I don't know that we can change that happens. We have confirmation bias as humans, but releasing the 50-page report and the residents saying, oh, wow, that's good evidence. That's not what they say. They say, look how complicated this utility is and everything they're trying to hide in this 50-page technical report that we put out, these fact sheets that we put out. What we need to do, and this looks so simple on this slide, but it's very hard for us, is lead with simple transparency. We need to go out and have real conversations about here's what we know, here's what we don't know, and here's what we're going to do next about it. Because the only way to attack confirmation bias is to win over trust. And you win trust slowly, you win trust through relationships, you win trust through transparency and telling the truth. One thing, just like I ask you to validate the concerns of your customers, I want to validate the concerns you have of doing these, what I call 3 simple steps that aren't so simple. I get that it's scary to go out and say, here's what we don't know. Because you have lived experiences where there's been a really hard public meeting, right? Or the mayor or the council member has really, hammered you on the head for something. But this makes you human. This makes you vulnerable, and this helps you build trust. It also corrects information, It keeps you from being silent too long, where people can fill gaps. There's some neuroscience about that that I have later that I probably won't have time to get to. This is something that we really need to be out there doing a lot more of. So number 5, the one we're going to sit with here just for a minute, is the information deficit myth. So we think that people disagree because they don't have the information. This goes directly to what I said is, the number one problem with communications is we think we just keep throwing more information at it. But the truth is, and there's a whole body of research, so I'm not just quoting one researcher or one social scientist down there, is that people usually disagree because of their values, their identity, their trust, their emotion, right? They're in that amygdala response, and what perceived risk there is. This is a huge problem for us because we like to answer with data and we like to answer with information. And the biggest mistake you can make is treating a trust problem like a knowledge problem. It's not about going out and educating and informing only. Those are parts of communication, those are parts of engaging. But a lot of what we have in this sector is a trust problem. And so data centers are a hot topic. So decided to talk about those. A lot of times we're out doing what you see on the left, where we're reporting, we're telling them what they don't know, and we're like, when they leave here, like now they know this and it's all going to be good. And that's not the goal. Like the goal needs to be to listen to them, to validate their concerns, hear their concerns. I was talking to someone recently about some data center stuff going on in their community and a lot's in the news. And I said, hey, there's so and so. He's a really big, community advocate. A lot of people trust him. Have you went and talked to them? And they said, oh, that's not going to make any difference. We're not going to change his mind. But it's not about changing minds. It's about listening to them and hearing their concerns because their concerns about data centers are valid. Um, so this is kind of how it goes right now, right? The public's asking, will data centers take all of our water? And we're giving them this 12-page fact sheet explaining all that stuff that you see on the screen and here's how everything works, and they think we've avoided the question. That's because their question was not, will data centers take all of our water? Their real question is, are you protecting them? Are you doing your job? Are you serving the community? Are you looking out for them? And that's the question we need to answer. So I have 2 slides just on some steps we can take with this as an example, but it's not just data center, guys, it's everything. And we can do it better this way. Very first, what did I tell you is that going back to real quick, people are disagreeing based on values and trust. And so that's what we need to address first. Connect with values. Hey, our first responsibility is always to ensure the reliable water for our existing customers. Like we hear you on that. Then you compare that fact. So any new customer, including a data center, must not conflict with that responsibility. Telling them like you have a responsibility to them and you hold that really highly. Acknowledge their concern. That's that CAP method. It's very reasonable to ask whether a new large facility would affect your supply, especially as these national conversations are happening. Again, I think when we don't acknowledge and we skip that step so often, we're really insulting people, and then you're never going to get to a reasonable exchange of information. Then you can relate to them. It's the same information we're asking. We actually consider that very same thing. Then you can talk through your process and decision. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 steps before we ever get to talk through our decision process. And a lot of times, like I said, we start there or we start at the conclusion. So before, over here to the right, what's in red is like probably what you do now. What is in green is maybe a better way. So instead of just saying, hey, a lot of experts study this and like we've got it together, talk them through the process. Hey, before anyone gets service, we evaluate this, we go through this, we look at impacts on existing customers. And then you need to show people in the story. I told you already, people care about people, not stats and data. And so saying something like, we think about if next year 1,000 new families move here, are we going to have the capacity to serve them reliable water? And if the answer is no, then this project would be dead. Like addressing some of the fears, the very valid fears that they have. And then in this case, this might not be in all cases, but fairness is a big question around data centers, right? And that's a value that people hold. Are giant corporations getting any special treatment? And this is the national conversation. So, hey, that's valid. It's fair to ask about costs. Let them know industrial customers pay the full cost of service. They're not subsidized. Let me show you how. And then you can show them, not only show them how, like whatever the decisions you've made, but show the guardrails that are in place. Yeah, I was gonna skip this, but well, I'm gonna skip this part. But one thing to take away here is to just trust me on this. When you're not telling your story, someone else is. There is brain science behind how we humans fill voids with negative information. We can't help it. We're just stupid little humans. You do it too. And so when you're not out there speaking, telling your story, answering questions, listening, and engaging, the void is being filled and not in a good way. So be out there telling your story. I do want to end us on, let me look real quick. Yeah, I want to end us on why people are so resistant. And we talked about this a little bit on that number 5 that I talked about. And, again, I told you most communications lessons you're hearing is here's how you message well and here's how you message clear, and all that's super important. But that you can do that well, and you can have the best press conference you've ever had, and you even listen to them, like you said, Chelsea, and they still push back. And here's why: resistance is really about protection. So it's never random. It's never just like they're unreasonable people and they hate you. I know that's what we think a lot of time. I know I told you I used to think, well, those are just unreasonable people and they're the problem. But really, it's our brain defending something. And it goes back to, like I said, that feeling of identity, safety, autonomy, belonging, their value system. So you're seeing pushback, either they're shutting down or they're being silent. That's more like internal employee, or they're arguing the same point over and over and dragging their feet no matter how much facts you kind of throw at it. But what is actually happening is they have some fear of something. Maybe that's losing control. Maybe that's a threat to their self image. Maybe it's some unmet need. We talked about data centers and the thought of, am I going to be protected and have safe water? Are you doing your job and protecting me like you're supposed to? Is this fair? Like, is someone getting special treatment? That's really the questions that people have around data centers. Those aren't technical questions. And we should be responding to those fears, whether they ask them that way or not. So really figuring out what is the core behind the resistance, and not fighting it, but using it as a data point. When we can really get curious about why, someone with an opposing view thinks how they do, we can relate to them more. We can get to the core of what they actually care about, what the problem actually is, versus if you're stuck in this loop of answering this technical question with this technical facts, and you never actually address what someone is really frustrated about. You can't make people change. This does not mean people can't change. I want to be clear. That's why I underline make, but you can't force it. And in fact, there's some neurological science about the harder you dig in, the more they resist against you. I like to joke, maybe if I knew this when I was married, I wouldn't be divorced. I was one of those person that would just like, hey, but look at this like really reasonable thing that I'm going to say over and over until you accept that I said it. And I think we as utilities are doing that too. Like we're saying, we're experts in our field, we know our stuff, and we want to push that out there. But really, when we dig in that way, we are pushing people further away. And so I told you before, I had recommended to someone, hey, there's this really big community advocate speaking out against this stuff. You should sit down and meet with them. And they said, oh, that's not going to change anything. Like people have told me, like he's never going to change his mind. But that's not your goal. Your goal is to create conditions where change becomes possible or even attractive. Your goal is to listen to them, instead of going in and saying, I'm going to give them the facts and they're going to come out differently. You should genuinely want to hear why they're concerned, because remember, their concerns are reasonable. So we should want to go in with a different mindset. So as we wrap up here, people need ownership to move. This word co-create really scares us in the water sector. We normally, there's something called the spectrum of public engagement, and it starts off with just informing, and that's where we like to stay comfortable. And we just got used to that guy, like, hey, you just told us to communicate. We're finally doing that, and you want us to co-create. But really bringing people in the process is really important. I'm going to glaze over that real quick. How you do that is going deeper to understand motivations. And so what people come to a conversation with is their stated position. I hate data centers, their demands, stop this data center in the community. Here's all my arguments, and I'm going to fight you no matter what you do. But as we talked about, underneath that is the value and fears that really are motivating those things. And that's what we've got to get to talk about. Two great questions to do this is, hey, what concerns you most about this? Or what matters most to you here? These are not rhetorical questions. These are ones I actually want you to ask. And people want to be seen. People want to be heard. And when you ask them this, it helps you get to underneath that iceberg, those hidden motivations. So with that, I'm going to leave you with that speaking the way the brain listens is absolutely a superpower that we need to learn more of in this field. And so Rogue Water Lab puts on something called Catalyst, where we dig deeper into this stuff. So would love to have you there. There's a QR code. And two, I'd love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. I love talking about all this stuff. So with that, I will close out and let Gina come back up. And I think there are time for questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Chelsea. That as a communicator myself, that was fascinating. So we have a question that I think might take a little time to address. So we'll see where we get with this. The person
Scared
says,
now.
thank you, excellent presentation. It feels like we need to look at all of our communications with these insights in mind. Can you suggest a framework for implementing and practicing these principles with our team? Like, where should we even start? And with an audit of our messaging across all communications, or where?
Yeah, that is a tough question. This is gonna sound like a plug, but this is my genuine answer, and then I'll keep talking and see where else I get. One, there are lots of consultants out there that want to help you. So I won't name them all because they'll be mad if I don't name one, but there are many out there. And if that is where you want to start, I think that's fine. Many of them are really good at this and they've done the training and they've learned the science behind it, right? Um, and I think they're so useful and so helpful in many situations. What Rogue believes is that we need to teach the industry to fish instead of just give them the fish. And so I think it's very important that you understand how it works too. You know, a consultant can come in, they can set you up straight. And a lot of times that's needed, and I highly recommend it. But when they leave, if you still can't do some of these things and message well and engage well, like you can't just hire a consultant for the rest of your life, right? Um, so what's going to sound like a plug is I really do encourage and welcome people to come to Catalyst. It is a space where people like you with the same needs as you and the same challenges as you build community. People stay connected and you ask them, hey, what are you doing? And learn ideas from people. Catalyst, if you follow it, and I'll try to put the link in the chat in a minute, but if you look online and kind of look at some of the videos, we model the engagement we're teaching. And so it's not like a conference. You're not sitting in a conference room staring at a PowerPoint with someone like right behind a podium. We are moving venues. We're using the social science and neuroscience and behavioral science that we're talking about. So you really get a good feel of it. You, if nothing else, leave super inspired. And then we have master class called Convergence, where we bring in a lot of these experts to teach. So that is a tough question. Probably a consultant might have answered it differently, but I think my answer is that really investing in some professional development to get a good understanding of this stuff, and then hiring consultants when you need to, and then figuring out how to build up the skills. It is probably overwhelming of like where do you start, but I think you need to dig deeper into understanding first.
Okay. We have one participant that has raised their hand, and I think that means they would like to ask you the question themselves. So I'm going to open up that one microphone. This is for Debbie. Um, and Debbie, you should be able to speak now. Your mic is in mute though on your end. There we go.
I think I accidentally clicked on it. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Thank you. Okay, so do we have um let's see, we
And
have some
someone
other
said
comment.
about sending a copy of the presentation, and
Yeah.
I don't know if ARWO does that or not. I'm happy to provide it, and if not, also contact me on LinkedIn or email, and I can get it to you guys too.
Yeah, we'll be sending out an email with a replay of this webinar, and you can share that with your friends and family if you like. So that may also be helpful as well. All right. Any last minute burning questions from our audience? Give it another couple seconds in case somebody is frantically typing. Okay, I'm going to take
I'm going to
the
come off mute and ask a question too. Chelsea, have you ever performed media training for utility executives. Is that something that Rogue does? Is that something that you've done personally?
Yep, Rogue will put on media training. We have other partners we like to bring in depending on the need for that too. My background is in journalism, and some of our partners also background is in journalism. And I'm actually very passionate about how we engage or do not engage with the media and how we, think that they are the bad people when really it's on us to kind of tell our own story. So would love to do that if anyone needed that and were interested.
Very good. That's something I don't know is really well covered inside our industry.
Yeah, it's a great point.
So Gina's pinged me here. I'm Glenn Marsloff. I'm currently the board secretary of ARWO. And first, I want to thank Chelsea so much, Session Rogue Water, for coming on and presenting today at our monthly webinar. Also, we got a couple things to pitch. One is the Catalyst event that Chelsea already kind of talked about that Rogue Water puts on. We have a partnership with them for an upcoming board workshop that's being held in conjunction with Catalyst. So on August 31st is the main date for that. It's an all-day workshop for the board. And to my knowledge, it's the first of its kind in the industry, right? We're trying to find ways to build peer groups for board members of water, board-driven utilities in the water industry. And I don't think that's out there so far. So obviously it's something that great communications, great governance is something that Chelsea's passionate about. So we've got some great partners that are helping out with this. So it's Rogue Water, it's the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies, AMWA, who helped get ARWO started back about a decade ago. Chelsea is one of the education and content providers, along with Manny Teodoro. Probably a lot of you know him, professor at University of Wisconsin. Jason Carter with Arcadis. Leads our strategic planning and leadership practice. Andrew Burnham with Stantec is a financial vice president, and he's reading a part on finances for the board. And then we have Maria Elena Geiner and Zina Erdop, easy for me to say, from Black and Veatch, but Black and Veatch is doing a section 2, along with kind of like an overall engagement process for board members. So again, it's first of its kind. We've got a discount for either AMWA or ARWO members following the code you see on there. So really encourage you to come out there. We're really thankful for the partnership with Rogue, with AMWA to put this on. Excited for the first of its kind, and hopefully this will be the first annual event. We intend to keep this going in the future, but we do need participation this year. So if you work at a board-driven utility, please, let your executives know, or maybe you're the executive, let your board members know, and try to get some folks to that. If you work with board-driven utilities, please make sure they're aware of this. It's first of its kind, so we're trying to get folks out there so we can have a successful launch to this. We have all the great, content. We just need to get folks in those seats. So as an example, here at Delco Water, our entire board is planning on attending this thing. So please send your board as well. With that, I think Gina has a few other things, Gina or Al, about membership and everything at ARWO, but thank you so much for attendance today. Chelsea, thanks so much for your participation here, and save me a seat. I've decided for sure that I'm going to go to Catalyst. I'll already be out there for the board training, but I'm going to go ahead and stick around for a couple extra days. So if you sell 149 seats, at least save the 150th for me, okay?
Love it. Thank you. Thank you,
All
guys.
right.
It's been great.
Turn it over to you, Al.
Yeah, Al, go
Right,
ahead.
thanks, Glenn. Gina, do you have a slide about membership to show us? There we go. So I work with Gina on membership and communication and marketing at ARWO, and I encourage you all to consider joining. The ARWO members are really passionate leaders in regional water organizations, and they've seen nearly every conceivable challenge that can arise. So as a member, you can pick their brains in our Problem Solvers Network. You can pose questions in the Ask the Regional Experts forums, attend the annual summit, get the monthly Regional Water Connection newsletter, and of course, the monthly webinars. And we're in the process of building a treasure trove of content that you can access, so that's always helpful. And we're halfway through the calendar year, so you can join now for a prorated half-off dues rate through the end of 2026. So that's a great opportunity, I think, to try out ARWO. And who doesn't need an awesome coffee travel mug to power your summer adventures? So join in June, and this special ARWO mug is yours. So email me if you would at arickard@arwo.org. Call me 703-402-9713. Love to have a conversation, answer your questions, and thank you for being here and part of this webinar.
Great. Well, that is a wrap for us today. I want to thank everyone for participating and especially thank Chelsea and our special guest speakers, Tad and Glenn. I hope that this was a useful session for you. Watch for our email with the replay and have a fantastic day.